Hi, folks. So, over the years, I have hand washed a lot of clothes. I'm not sure I could sit here and try to analyze why. Um, some of my clothes I've sewed, and I feel like the sewing I've done is sort of. Some of my clothes have gotten old, so I've sewed up holes and such, and feel like they're too delicate to go through the washing machine, that it might tear out the thread, so I hand wash them. But then there's other reasons. It's hard to think at the moment, but when I have hand washed, and I wear long sleeve shirts a lot. I've always rolled up my sleeves to keep them from getting wet. But lately I have been playing a little bit with just leaving the sleeves down and letting them get wet. I just hand washed, and you can see my sleeve got wet there at the bottom, so to speak. I mean, when I hold it up, it's sort of the top, but at the bottom, this one's same, and it's kind of feels nice because my arms at least are warm. The reason I never did it before is because I thought that when I finish, by the sleeves getting cold, it might make me vulnerable to catching a cold, because they'd stay wet for a while, and the water would be. It kind of cools down. It's warm water when I'm washing, but it cools down as it just sits there on the sleeve afterwards. And I still worry about that. I'm not sure if I'll continue with this idea. Or sometimes I've alternated. Sometimes I leave the sleeves down. Sometimes I roll them up. But it is fun. It has kind of a looser. Oh, it's kind of a more wild, sort of uninhibited way that you just, instead of being kind of careful about it and rolling them up, you just get in there and start washing and not even worry about what you're wearing. But it's a mixed bag. If my when they're wet, there's not an easy way to dry these quick. They will dry with time. I mean, I could take like a blow dryer and blow them, but that kind of defeats the purpose, because the whole idea of not rolling up the sleeves is sort of, or one of the big parts of it is just to save some effort. But one thing is that if I get too worried, I sort of start working them like this with my hands. In my mind, that kind of maybe squeezes out a bit of the water, and some of the water comes off onto this hand, and it gets rubbed around. It gets very thinned out and evaporates. Like when I do this, I get a little water on this hand, and I can feel it's a little wet now. And then I rub it a bit, and that water is close to gone now. It's getting so thinned out. I don't know. I think the more thinned out water is, the quicker it evaporates. If you have a puddle of water on the floor, it'll take a long time to evaporate. But if you spread that puddle all around the floor and thin it out, it'll evaporate more quickly. And I suppose that's a bit of the principle here. Or maybe, yeah, the water, now I'm spreading that water around, and it'll evaporate more quickly. Plus, there's just less of it on any given spot, so there's not such a concern about it being cold. But this will help, and it helps psychologically. It makes me feel like I can do something to dry this. I kind of like drying like this with my hands, because it feels like kind of a creative. It kind of makes me feel empowered. It kind of makes me feel like instead of just sitting there with wet end of the sleeves, there's something I can do about it, which is what I'm doing here. It's still going to take, they're still going to be wet for a while, but I can at least speed it up a bit. And I think it'll be interesting to see how effective this is. I've only been doing this a little bit for a little while. I don't even know if this is very effective, if they'll stay wet for a long time anyway, or how much it'll speed it up. I don't even know if I do nothing how long it will take these to dry. But if I continue with this idea, that'll be an interesting little bit of learning as well. So I don't know if I'm going to continue with this idea. I don't know if it'll work out. I'm sharing it as something you can be aware of, maybe play with, maybe not. I don't even know if it's a good idea. Maybe I will catch more colds doing this. Or maybe by doing it I'll become kind of tougher and a little more immune to colds, or maybe both. Maybe I'll catch more colds and become more immune. Maybe I won't catch colds at all. My brother's theory is that you don't catch colds from being cold. And it's a long explanation as to why, but it is conceivable that even if this makes the wrists or wherever the fabric is colder, that it won't cause me to catch colds. Anyway, just sharing it. It's an option. See what you think. If I think of anything more to say about this, I'll write it in the details under the video, the description, the written description, or make another video about, perhaps. If you like this stuff, comment and subscribe and share and all those things. Comments are interesting and stimulating, hopefully lead to some interesting conversation. And those things, I think, cause YouTube to show the video in better focus. I think this will make me a little more kind of related. It'll make me a little more aware of fabric. And some fabrics are thicker. Some shirt fabrics are thicker than others. So if I keep doing this, it'll be interesting to see how much difference it makes, the thickness of the fabric as to how fast it dries. You could learn some of those things without getting the ends of your sleeves wet, I think. But this is kind of, you might be more likely to learn them this way because it's right there, it's immediate. So I suppose you can kind of do this thing, both hands at once, both sleeves at once, and you can do it while you walk. You know, if I were walking somewhere in the house, I could do it. That's another kind of technique or approach. Another additional kind of possibility here. You could try sucking the water out, but I think you might make them wetter because of your saliva. I mean, you can kind of do it with the same hand on the same wrist. One thing I'm kind of intrigued by is what effect having these will still be wet a while, what effect having them be wet might have. Will the ends of the sleeves stay cleaner and look different? That'll be interesting. Might they start to deteriorate at the end? That'll be kind of interesting in kind of an avant-garde sort of fashion sense. So those might get answered. In fact, you could sort of rap out a beat here. As you tap that water, it should speed up that drying just a tiny bit. Tap that wet area. There's just a lot of options for how to use your hands to get some of this water out. Do it with the palm, go around, kind of crazy like, kind of, it's getting all kind of, it might, doing it up like that, it might kind of spread the water out on up here. So it can be sort of fun and playful. Yeah, that's already a little drier. Does it look? It looks kind of drier too. That one's a little drier. Or you can do nothing and just let them dry kind of naturally. And just, you can kind of bunch them and just kind of rub them all together. That should sort of spread that water out. Some of it go on your hands. If you consider this, if you have any fear of catching a cold from it, I think if you're younger, you're less vulnerable than if you're older. I don't know if it can cause a cold, but an older person would be more vulnerable, so consider that. Sometimes when you hand wash, these sleeves get kind of folded under a bit, and you kind of stretch out your hands a bit in the sink, and the sleeves don't get too wet. I just washed another garment, but they did still kind of get wet. So maybe it's hard to avoid unless you roll them up. Now that I'm kind of squeezing out and actually getting some visible drops of water on my hands. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, there's so many ways to rub them. Now I'm just doing it with my thumb and fingers. Once you start playing with it, you may kind of find different ways to play with it. It might make you more aware of fabric and textile. Oh, now I'm doing two hands just on this one sleeve. I kind of am intrigued by how fabrics feel. I'm trying to become more aware and sensitive to that. I was a little worried that when I typed at the keyboard that this wet stuff might lie on there, but it seems like the hands either are down at the end of the keyboard towards me and it's just the fingers, or they can stretch up high on the keyboard, but it's still kind of just the hands that touch, not too much of the sleeves. So it doesn't seem to be a problem. I don't know. This is a new idea for me. It seems to me if you put up your hand and you were getting this on the keyboard, you could just push it or pull it off a little. Anyway, it so happens I was about to change this shirt to a physically cooler shirt. So that might be a consideration if you're thinking about not rolling up. It is possible this could apply to other things. For example, do you roll up your sleeves when you work on your car or when you do carpentry or painting? I suppose if you kept them down, you might get some interesting stains on there. It wouldn't look as clean, but it'd look kind of artsy, I think, kind of, artsy is the best word, kind of, kind of free and interesting and uninhibited and varied colors and shapes of the splashes of oil or paint.